intro music.
Good choice.
We didn't have anything else to choose from. Welcome to Humble Brags and Shopping Bags. We are back for another episode, which is sponsored by ShipBob, a tech-led end-to-end global fulfillment provider. We are joined by Guillaume and Josh today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, team.
Thank you. Very excited.
Yeah,
No.
so are we.
So we've got Guillaume or G.
G, please.
Call me G.
We'll go with G.
We'll call him G.
Yeah.
Do yourself that favor and call me G.
Done. Say less. We're very excited to talk about logistics today. We had a previous episode which we touched on it and it was super interesting and I think very relevant for our audience. A lot of retailers listening, especially coming up to silly season when people just get crazy amounts of orders.
Yeah. We were talking about before how it's such a complex space, and I feel as though it's one of those things. Whenever I talk to a retailer or even an agency or a brand or whoever, they go, "That's the black box that we just kind of shut down in and let somebody else make those decisions for us." Mm-hmm. But you know, we're massive on education is so key. It's so important, and so having the likes of ShipBob and yourselves on to talk through that complexity and simplify it for our audience, I think is going to be really interesting. And obviously weaving in what ShipBob does, how they work, because I think that provides that layer of education as well.
100%.
Yeah.
I think a layer of education that is much needed. So very much looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about e-commerce is fulfillment is the whole reason e-commerce exists. You can't, you're not some of you have brick and mortar stores, but you need to ship the products from warehouses to those stores. But online, the only way to get your products to your merchants is via fulfillment. And yet so many people lack that understanding of how it works and the details of it as well.
Absolutely. So let's just kick off. I'd love for both of you to just introduce yourselves, what you do currently, how you got into logistics and kind of your journey. Because I think that will be a great way to start and provide the context for the rest of the episode.
Absolutely. Do you want me to start, Josh?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So Guillaume has a French background, so you can probably tell by the accent and the name as well. I've been in Australia for about 10 years, and before joining ShipBob, I was sailing a different ship, working for a born and bred Aussie startup called ShipIt, that provides sort of last mile solutions for a number of Aussie and more recently Southeast Asian sort of retailers. And in fact, Josh as well, you were setting a different ship with ShipStation as well. So we're still very much in this space, right?
All of the ships.
All of the ships, right? It's a very creative way, but and look, so I was heading up sales and partnerships at ShipIt for nearly sort of 3 years. And when the opportunity to join sort of ShipBob came up, I was very keen to, learn more about it, right? And I was, in fact, really drawn into the vision that our two co-founders, Drew and Divey, really had for the business. And I was also genuinely very excited by the technology, that ShipBob offers. And I think, especially its ability to really sort of drive sort of, enhance the operations, of sort of the logistics operations of a lot of e-commerce, brands, and really drive the sort of digital transformation agenda, which, let's be fair, in this industry certainly presents large room for improvement. So been about now 15 months in that journey. I welcome sort of Josh, halfway through that. And look, it's been a really sort of a fantastic ride. We've had a very overwhelmingly positive response from the market here in Australia, and we want to continue to participate in local ecosystem. So, very exciting times ahead.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I'm Josh. I started with ShipBob earlier this year in January. I joined from another ship, being ShipStation, and that was one of the 12 brands or more that they had under the Octane banner. And so I used to head up partnerships for them in the ANZ region. They're a US global fulfillment company. That was my first kind of jump into e-commerce. I've been doing partnerships for over 8 years with like Department of Defense or Telstra or, consulting firms. And I wanted to get into a younger, more culturally diverse industry. And so I took a risk, and I was like, you know what? I don't know anything about fulfillment. I know e-commerce where I bought stuff, and I jumped in and joined ShipStation, and I absolutely loved it. And my first meeting back after my horrific thing in Italy was with G, and because he had joined the company, and we were partners, ShipStation and ShipBob. And I remember going to lunch with G and me trying to be like, don't mock me too much. I can't eat properly. I just had jaw surgery in Italy. So, but yeah, then shortly after that, I think that was like in June. Oh, no, it was after August. So, and then the opportunity arose to join ShipBob. And what really drew me to ShipBob beyond just the culture is the way that that the company was innovating in the space. Whilst I was at ShipStation, I was watching them. I first met Christina and Shipton when they came from overseas over here to start it off, and I really got to build this awareness of them and how we do it differently, which I'm sure we'll jump into, than your traditional 3PLs. But we also work with those other 3PLs. So we're really creating this fulfillment ecosystem that works really well for merchants and also your mum and dad, smaller 3PL operators, to have the same opportunities so that they can compete on the levels of Amazon on a global scale. So it was my interesting point to join.
So much to uncover in what both of you just said. So I think it's a good pivot just talking about ShipBob, but from the perspective of like, go back to the kind of tell us the story, the origin story of ShipBob and kind of how it evolved, and then take us through kind of, you spoke about operational efficiencies, how ShipBob is innovating in the space. Give us a picture of what that is.
And I think as well, from the lens of our listeners, it'd be really interesting to understand what you guys do differently, and if a brand was to jump on board, what services do you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. And great question here. So, starting from the beginning there, so ShipBob was founded in 2014 by our two co-founders, Drew and DeVay, based out of Chicago in the US, right? And in the space of the 9 years, the company's been running, it's grown to be right now the leading global outsourced fulfillment provider after Amazon. So servicing 7,000 sort of brands globally and operating across 5 different markets, right? And at its core, and as you said, sort of Anna, there's so much to unpack around this fulfillment space. And our mission is really simple. It's just to simplify, fulfillment, right? And to make it accessible for a large number of small and medium-sized, e-commerce brands. So from first mile to middle mile, last mile, B2B fulfillment, D2C fulfillment, all those sort of very sort of rather sort of scary sort of terminologies, but that's all the things that we live and breathe every day. And we're very much uniquely positioned, again, as a global logistics partner to really support, those brands, along this journey. So yeah, a lot to unpack there, but that's the sort of short story as to where sort of ShipBob comes from. I don't know if Josh, there's anything you want to add here.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things is DeVay and Drew started this company, and the culture that they built within this company, I think, is a testament to them in themselves, right? And when you hear their stories, and you can see that online, they'll both come from migrant families from India, and they've really built this company around a really good product, but then a really good team behind them. And I think that's that exciting kind of thing around that as well, which is one of the differentiators that we have within that kind of market.
That's awesome. And from the lens of a retailer, can you talk to us about the services that ShipBob provides and how you make the fulfillment process easier for e-commerce brands?
Absolutely. So look, what we always say is we're not a plug and play, sort of software solution, right? So we want, our brands, the brands that we work with, to see us as a real sort of fulfillment partner, because we ultimately, we work with their inventory, and our mission will be to sort of receive that inventory, store that inventory within our facilities, and then go through the motion of picking, packing, and dispatching, right? So we do everything on their behalf. And naturally, it's not something we can just hand the keys, of the car and say, all right, just, off you go. this is where we need that partnerships to be, absolutely in place. You've talked about the city season coming up, which is, absolutely what's top of mind for us right now. So how do we help those brands that, in the space of the next sort of 30 days might be doing a 2x, 5x, 10x their volumes, right? Shall they be doing that in-house? That would certainly present some real limitations, in their ability to scale. So this is where a partner like ShipBob can really come in and really support those brands through their journey, right? So there's a lot that, to unpack there. But I think another, for me, interesting point is e-commerce is not what it used to be a few years ago, where you could spin up a Shopify store, chuck in a few dollars on Facebook or Google and see that sort of success, sort of rise, right? Today, it's becoming a much more complex industry, right? So very early in their growth journey, brands will have to, sell across multiple channels, So obviously, their online store will be, their sort of main sort of outlets, but thinking retail, thinking drop shipping, thinking, all those multiple channels, but also multiple geographies as well. Global expansion is certainly the single best lever for growth, for brands today. And it's becoming increasingly complex. So how do they manage that? You know what I mean? And I think for me, it touches to the points to really, the need today to have really sort of specialists supporting those brands through their journey, as opposed to generalists, in a previous life. And look, that's where, fulfillment and shipping is what we live and breathe every day. So that's where we're sort of uniquely positioned to assist them. You know what I mean?
And taking it back a level again, just to provide that context and that, logistics and fulfillment 101, can you give us an idea of the different providers within the space? Because I know we've spoken a lot about the ships. What makes everyone different? What needs to be what's the value chain within logistics that people need to understand?
It's a very complex space. It's very nuanced, and frankly speaking, it's not very sexy. Meaning that there's a lot of.
You're trying to bring sexy in, though.
Yeah, except for us, we all make it. We make shipping sexy.
This is where we come in,
Yes.
and our mission is to make it sexy. But to your point, where to start. Very often brands, genuinely stay stuck at this question, right? It's like, and there's no sort of playbook that says you need to, following at milestone A, B, and C, that type of, of solution. So what we always recommend is any brands, start fulfilling in-house, because this is where you learn the ropes. This is where, what works for you, what doesn't. Every brand will have unique, freight profile and also shipping and fulfillment requirements. So what works for brand A will probably not work for brand B, right? And once you've gone through that motion, what works or what doesn't. Once you reach the stage of saying, hey, you know what, I don't have the capacity to rock up at Ostpost, every single day to ship my parcel. Now is the time to sort of engage someone to start doing this on my behalf. This is usually that sort of inflection points where, a company like ShipBob can really come in and be a real point of support. And then ShipBob versus a lot of other players in the market, every player will have its own strength, and serviceability, and we'll have to work through those requirements. So this is something that's very important for us, because both coming from that sort of more technology sort of space where everyone is a good fit, right? Whereas we get to ShipBob and we're actually, going through the sort of ICP. So we're vetting each and every merchant based on their freight profile and requirements and saying, look, we are uniquely positioned to help you. Let's just do this, and we're excited to partner with you. But look, some other, brands, would be like, I'm sorry, we genuinely are not uniquely positioned to help you there. We don't want to overpromise on the deliver. There may be other players in the market that would genuinely do a better job than us there. So
I think
I love that. I just think that brings such an authenticity and transparency into the brand and into what you deliver. And again, I work at Shopify, so biased, but Shopify has always been like that. If you're not a right fit, we're going to tell you. But there's something that's so valuable about that as well, because it means that when you come to them and say, actually, we are a right fit now based on capabilities, there's going to be that trust already built.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's even in my role. It's where I'm trying to educate the whole e-commerce industry is connecting people to the right people to have those conversations. I've had conversations as many as last week with merchants all the time. And I will sit there and say, you're not the right fit here. this either a ship it or a ShipStation solution is a better solution for you right now. Until you get to this stage, or depending on what your requirements are. I think, as G mentioned, every brand's different. I know you're starting a side hustle. I'm starting a side hustle. I travel a lot. I'm not going to be able to sit there and fulfill orders from my house once a week. And so, using ShipBob's growth plan means it's a less hands-on approach on my onboarding, but I'm allowing people and startups to have that ability to grow with the company. And a lot of 3PLs, as another differentiator, another 3PLs, won't take on people unless they have minimum order quantities. For us to manage your account and help you with onboarding, we do have that. But for those really, smaller ones, we've got really rigid processes that are the same globally. And that's one of those really value adds. And then if we are not the right fit, we've got a network of partners who are deemed as our competitors in some cases. And everyone's like, oh, you've got a connection there? I'm like, yeah, let me introduce you to, B Dynamics or MCM or Next 3PL or one of those people where it hasn't been the right fit for us because, they might have a different capability. To me, that's a lot more valuable, as it's one of my values, is to be authentic and honest. And, I've never agreed in working with a company that's telling you to sell something that you don't believe in. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing about ShipBob is you can sell the product and actually believe in it.
You spoke about growth plan just then. Can you take us through a bit more around what that is and what it entails? Reason being is I've actually got a colleague, Simon Underwood. Shout out Simon Underwood. He'll love that I've just mentioned his name. He uses ShipBob for his side hustle and raves about you. Like, it's just constantly says ShipBob is the best solution. It's helped him out so much. He's been able to go from strength to strength by using ShipBob as a fulfillment partner. What is his journey like? Take us through what that looks like. What is a growth plan for retailers that want to work with you? How do they onboard? How do they kind of make sure that they're making the most of what you offer?
Yeah, so growth plans pretty much is what it says. So anything that's less than 400 shipments per month, and that meets the criteria for the warehouses that it is, they can self-onboard. And so what that means is anything over that, generally a merchant will get a account executive, an implementation manager, and then a customer success manager or customer success kind of team. And so they got phone support, email support, all of that kind of stuff. With the growth plan, it means because they're not at that big scale at that stage, but they still want to use us. They will follow our processes and onboarding, and they're pretty detailed and easy to read. And then once approved, it's more email support in that regards. And there's the pricing that they will get, which is unlike the other plans, it's more negotiated on a case-by-case basis depending on the needs, because we don't box everyone into, we're not like some of the larger players where they sit there and say, you must conform to this and this is how you do it. We sit there and go, well, how do you, do you want customization? Do you want kitting? Do you want bundling? But with the growth plan, they don't have as much flexibility to do that because it needs to come in that way. But it allows them that ability to forget about picking, packing and shipping. So I know.
So they get the 3PL service with the growth plan?
Yeah. So they get the 3PL service. They get all those benefits. It's just, and G, maybe help me out here. But they're probably not as flexible as what we might be
with the
for
support and customers like that.
Absolutely. And look, I think for me, growth is there's growth based on the current state of play of business, but there's also growth and how that journey comes about and how can ShipBob be that partner, through the sort of like key milestones that, those business will hit as they continue to grow and go through those stages of maturity. And I think for us, that's very important because ultimately, to Josh's point, it's a hefty process. It's very hands-on as an approach, right? You can have very unique requirements. You want your unboxing experience to meet X, Y, and Z sort of requirements. So that goes through some kitting requirements on our side, custom packaging, whatever that may be, right? And this is where our team is genuinely really, there's always a point of contact to really assist with that. We're very fortunate that we're a tech, led company at its core. which means that the technology is super intuitive, right? And will offer that very seamless experience for anyone that really sort of like, sort of tries to genuinely get on that journey, by him or herself. But we also have the team to really support, through that journey. So you are today an Australian sort of born and bred business, going through the motion of launching multiple different channels and getting to the success, and the size, and maturity where you're like, all right, now is the time for us to be thinking through next steps in terms of expansion. Well, ShipBob also has the capabilities to support a number of brands through their internationalization journey, right? And that's what 7,000 customers that we have right now is the core message that we own into them is. You have the ability today, whether you're based in Australia, in the US, or the UK, to be leveraging our global, network of warehouses. We've got 50 spread across 5 different markets as we speak. That number will grow to 100 within the next 2 years. And based on the technology that is our home ground, WMS, we're genuinely able to provide that consistent experience for you brand, but also for your end consumers, whether you distribute your inventory across our Sydney, Dallas, or sort of Manchester facilities, for instance. So that's also for me what growth, sort of means is not looking at instant tea, but it's looking at like, how can we be the best partner to really help you through that journey? You know what I mean?
And you speak about inventory. And I think that's a good pivot because often we find brands that we speak to as well have issues with inventory. And people underestimate how hard it is to manage inventory. How does ShipBob help with that part of the process in particular? Can we go a little bit deeper into that?
Absolutely. And it's like great question because I think inventory management has been probably one of the biggest pain points of a lot of e-commerce brands, especially in the last 3 to 4 years. We've gone through, certainly ups and downs. And I think the global supply chain, in my view, has been such under immense pressure, due to the geopolitical climate, due to sort of, capacity in the network, labor shortage that we are still experiencing
so
and
many
will
things.
continue to.
It's just a consistent snowball, isn't it?
Exactly right. There's so many variables there. And I think as an island nation, Australia relies on the import of goods, which puts further strain on a lot of like logistics operations there. So I think the way that we support there, I mean, our technology will allow, a lot of brands to first and foremost have the visibility and transparency of the inventory on hand, that they have in real time across all the different locations that they use through ShipBob, right? And also have some sort of more proactive sort of notifications that gives them, the sort of updates of like, oh, so your SKUs X, Y, and B are reaching that sort of, floor thresholds. Now is the time to sort of, thinking of replenishment. So that technology really sort of helps brand on the day-to-day to really help manage their stock better. And again, I think, as we discussed, before, it's not just a pick and pack and ship. We're looking at sort of covering the entire sort of value chain. And for instance, we've got, solutions that help a number of our brands, with that sort of first mile, so like from China to the US, because it's currently the main sort of markets there. It's not available just yet in Australia, but will be soon. But like that's also is how can we help release some of the pressure that you guys may have in getting your product from point A to point B, knowing all the challenges that it comes with. So we're trying to really map out all the pain points from those merchants and really understand how can we alleviate, because we do acknowledge that inventory management is and will continue to be a major challenge.
One of the excuse me. One of the really exciting things about our platform, and AI is such a hot topic. And
that buzzword.
Yeah.
That AI, baby.
We don't call it AI, but I like to call it AI. So we have this distributed inventory capability within our platform. And it's one of the key things, or another differentiator than most of the WMS and 3PL platforms that are out there. And what that does is it allows a merchant, it allows you to view the visibility of all the past orders and suggest where is the best place to place your inventory so that you can get your product to your customers quicker, cheaper, and in my mind, and even a lot more sustainable. Apple recently released, if you had a look at their video, that really funny kind of Mother Nature calling them into question and all this. And the person who was in charge of their distribution even sat there and said they've reduced their emissions, I think it was like 75%, I can't remember off the top of my head, by stopping sending all their iPhones from their factories by planes and sending it via sea freight. It takes longer to get there, but the impact on the earth. And so when you talk about all these brands here in Australia where sustainability is such a huge thing, then you go to like the Beauty Expo. We were at the Beauty Expo and you see a brand that's got this massive sustainability thing right in the middle. And then you ask them where they're shipping from and like, oh, we ship everything from Adelaide. Everything's made here. Everything's great. I'm like, are you shipping internationally? Yeah, like a lot of our customers are international. And I'm like, okay, so you ship all the individual products by air over to like America or the UK, and like, yeah, and I'm like, that must be a lot of carbon dioxide going in the area. And so I think that's one of those key elements that we probably don't harp on as much as we should, because but it is one of those key features that like I harp on about all the time being at ShipBob, because it is such a key thing to be able to distribute that inventory.
Sustainability. It's another hot topic and super important and at the forefront of a lot of retailers' minds. But I think, as you said, there is a little bit of an education piece around how they can be sustainable. And there's a little bit of a fear because there is a perception that it could be a little bit more expensive if they wanted to go down that route. How does ShipBob provide those services in a cost-effective way for retailers?
Yeah, I think so. We don't have a specific sustainability kind of like program. We do have stuff that we do ourselves in the back end. So a lot of our warehouses, where possible, all around the globe, we use FSC certified cardboard. You will see instead of bubble wrap, you'll see the paper hex, whichever it's called. We use water-based tape on our packaging boxes where we can, in majority of them as well. And so we do these as a conscious effort. And again, we probably don't harp on about it, and I do, because I think it is a really key point to have. And so even when I was in our warehouse in Chicago, I'm like, this is amazing. We use, paper fillers, all that kind of stuff. And it is really good from that perspective. And then we've got, the ability for us is we allow merchants to use their own packaging at the same time. And so so we include all that stuff for free, it's included in the price. So unlike most 3PLs, when you look at our pricing structure, it includes the delivery fee, the pick and packing of up to 4 picks, and the packaging material. If they want their own customize, which I've told Anita from Hero Packaging, and I've even taken photos before you walk through our warehouse and you'll see Hero Packaging.
I love that.
And so other brands, other brands are using and can have their own sustainable kind of packaging materials that they want within that. And then every time their order comes in, we'll pick it and pack it with those kind of stuff. Yeah. But sustainability, and I think we've touched on this many times in private conversations, sustainability is a constant evolving and learning experience. Our company is doing, what we can now, and we will continue to drive and look for innovative ways to be more sustainable and allow merchants to do that, even with the distributed inventory. And so I think, what we know now is going to be very different to what we know in 10 years' time.
Let's talk about some of that evolution, right? And I don't know whether you guys wanted to touch on this, but ultimately you've been in the logistics space for quite a bit of time. How has the concept around sustainability and logistics changed, and what do you think has been a driver of that?
It's a great question. How has it changed? I think it's, so every business, in the e-com and logistics space, will have sustainability on the agenda. You know what I mean? And I have had already, fortunately, for quite some time. And the good news is that we'll certainly have sustainability as one of the key business priorities moving forward. So I think it's really ultimately how each business will be able to drive change internally and innovate, to ultimately make sure that breaking down all the fulfillments and sort of shipping, processes and SOPs and capabilities in house, are evolving towards being, a lot more sort of meeting sort of sustainability goals, right? So, it will continue to be. It certainly is. When we look at some of the, roadmap items for us, in the future at ShipBob, it's certainly sustainability is one of the, key themes, where we're trying to really sort of put that top of mind. So how does that translate into our operations on the day to day? Is those small sort of innovative and little steps, that ultimately will get to that, sort of sustainability goals. I think there's one additional example that I sort of wanted to highlight on this is, I think one of the what I found is that one of the key drivers of carbon footprint is at its core and its simple form is like the box that an item is delivered on. I don't know if you have that already, but like you buy your sort of like supplements or you could be buying your sort of mushroom extracts there, and the products just get delivered in a box that is like 5 times the size. Yeah, I mean, and I find that so frustrating, right? And you realize that the reason why it's the case is just genuinely like businesses are optimizing, but probably are not at a stage of sophistications where they're able to accommodate for size and dimensions of products, right? So some of the things that we're doing at ShipBob, for instance, is that we've got what we call like a, it's not sexy, but it's like a QB scan technology. And every SKU that will come, into our facilities, products and weights will be just, very sort of, meticulously sort of, measured, through that QB scan machine. And then it's coupled with our box algorithm. So that essentially any SKU or order combination, will essentially take all the measurements in place and optimize the box accordingly. Just to sort of remove that sort of human error, because let's face it, the world of logistics means that you're prone to human errors. You're still, at the mercy of, individuals and, in a warehouse, and even with the best intentions, and, you still can't, only mitigate the risk. So I think going back to your initial question, where it's been and where it's going, I think it's those little increments. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like a silver bullet. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just constantly sort of looking at, processes and capabilities in place and where can we drive that sort of little change.
Yeah, and technology to support it as well.
Yep.
And technology to support it, 100%.
From what I've heard, like ship versus air, big consideration in terms of carbon footprint.
Huge.
Size of packaging, type of packaging.
Exactly right.
There's a few different areas that, again, we're raising this to bring awareness, because I think, and this also got brought up when we were speaking to Justin from the Aggregate Co, who consults in literally logistics optimization, is understanding these elements of your business and what you're doing, because then you can make the meaningful change.
100%.
So yeah.
You mentioned sustainability is one of it's like top on the agenda perhaps for next year or to continually evolve in for ShipBob. What are some of the other ways that you're continuing to innovate and stay at the forefront of logistics innovation?
Yeah, it's a great question again, and I think for us is we're on a growth journey, right? So we want to expand our footprint, right? So we've got a global network of 50 warehouses today. That number will grow by 100 in the next 2 years, and who knows where that's going to take us, in the future. So I think for us is just being conscious that whatever new products that we release, really meet those sustainability goals. So there's, again, not probably that silver bullet that says, all right, this is the one single capability or, piece of infrastructure that will really help meet our goals. It's just being very cognizant of, all right, as we continue to grow, let's just make sure that, we do that in a way that is very sustainable, right? So everything in our warehouse is powered by our technology. There's a scanning event for everything, right? So what we do is leverage, again, this technology to, again, make sure that we embed those innovations, sustainable sort of related innovations. So, I think we'll continue to see, in the future, more products that are meeting those, sustainability goals. We're going to continue to enhance, our overall technology in a way that will allow, ShipBob to place, the product as close as possible to the end consumers. And that's, in a way, for us, the biggest sort of commitments that we can make in order to make sure that we reduce that carbon footprint.
And regardless of sustainability, because obviously we've spoken about that a lot, it sounds as if you are innovating in many, many different ways beyond, like, the sustainability seems to almost be a byproduct of everything that you are doing when you're very technology driven. So before because I also want to touch on customer stories. I think that's really important. But in terms of that technology, how are you iterating and evolving that? Like, is there any like product iterations that you can share? Anything on the roadmap?
Yeah. So,
Lots.
yeah.
Oh, I love that.
We release things
Give us the scoop.
quarterly.
You release quarterly.
Yeah.
Okay, so you actually ship a lot.
Yes. It's always in the American seasons, as I'm sure Shopify,
Yeah.
you know, it's fall, summer,
Yeah.
winter, spring, winter. I can't get my seasons right. But I think, and I'll touch on that, and I think G's got some more visibility of what's coming up in the pipeline. But expansion is the biggest one, and the reason being is where we really help merchants, and we'll touch on Memo Bottle shortly as well, is those brands that want to tap into new markets. And so, for example, you know, Aussie brands can boost their sales significantly by selling in the US or selling in Europe. And so we really help those brands because the three biggest blockers, and I say this all the time, to businesses here in Australia, the main three business blockers is compliance and regulatory stuff. So your tax, your registrations, your legals, whichever. You've got payments, which a lot of people don't know how to, you know, receive or process the payments, and, you know, the FX conversions, all that can be quite costly. And then how do they fulfill it? Because fulfilling it and then, you know, all the VAT stuff, it's there. And so we really help them solve that problem. And then we've got great partners who help solve that. And so, but to do that as well, we want to be able to open up in more locations so that we can really help those merchants untap into those regions. And we've got a pretty good coverage right now. But, you know, Southeast Asia, we don't have any warehouses at the moment. And that's now China's the largest market in, it overtook America earlier this year or at the end of last year in GMV, on the total e-commerce GMV within that as well. So, but then from the product side, and G can,
I think, you know, one of the new capabilities being, for instance, released, you know, over in the US, which we hope, you know, will be a global rollout soon, is that sort of hub and spoke model. And it's, for instance, not just a case of like having as many, you know, facilities as possible. Is how do we optimize, you know, again, in a spirit of driving better sustainability, but also just, you know, general sort of improvements in our processes, just, you know, for a better experience for our merchants and hopefully driving the efficiencies there. So the hub and spoke model is essentially, you know, what will give the ability to a number of merchants to say, all right, you send your inventory to one of our facilities and we will, you know, ourselves looking at your freight profiles and all the requirements, then just decides to place, you know, your product in facilities that are as close as possible from your end consumers. So doing that, you know, is you know, something that very much follows the sort of Amazon model there. And we're hoping that, you know, again, as we continue to grow here in this region, that's something that we'll be able to bring, you know what I mean? But I think what's very interesting around the global aspect of it, because I know that's probably going to be one of the key topic of conversations, but we've been operating here in the region for about 2 years now, right? And initially, it was designed to be a proof of concept for global ShipBob merchants that wanted to expand into the region, right? That proof of concept was very successful, and which led to the second phase of growth, which is hire a local team to then service the needs of the local merchants. Fast forward to today, you know, half of our revenue in Australia and half of our merchants based are actually US and UK merchants, you know, that have now decided to expand into the Australian market. So it's pretty amazing, and I think the latest in date is like Our Place, which is, you know, a cookware brand, very famous in the US, one of our, you know, main merchants that literally announced it inside retail today that they're expanding into Australia, you know, at the start of next year, which is super exciting. So that is for us, you know, a real sort of, you know, definition of success, and again, where we think, you know, that ShipBob is uniquely positioned to help those brands. The implications for more of those local brands is, yes, it's going to create further competition in the domestic market in terms of acquisition and retention of customers. But to your point, Josh, is that it opens up a world of opportunity, right? So I'm thinking of another brand that we have that is called Ease Mini, that does like, you know, kids, outdoor kids sort of accessories. And those guys obviously have a very sort of seasonal activity, right? So those beautiful little chairs for the kids that you take to the beach, which work really well during summer here in Australia. And we're probably lucky that we can hit the beach pretty much every day here in Sydney, but still there's a seasonal effect to it. Well, you know, talking to Bastien, the owner of the business, now they're expanding, you know, into the US, which gives them the ability during the low season here in Australia to maximize their sales in California because it's hitting peak season over there. Yeah, I mean, so it's thinking about global, you know, in a way that really opens up a world of, you know, business opportunities for all those brands. You know?
Global is scary, right? Especially for a brand homegrown in Australia is very used to the way to do business here. So understanding a bit more around the pathways of going global, and that when I use the word sustainable, I mean like you don't want to just try and go into every single market overnight because you're just not going to be able to resource that.
Yeah.
How do you work with brands to plan that out and to map out what they need to do? Is there any type of engagement you have where you go, right, this is how I would be doing it based on the trends that we see, based on the data that we see? Is it that level of advisory?
Absolutely. And it's a process where we're, again, very hands-on because it requires to be hands-on. It is scary, as you said, you know, when you touch into, you know, compliance, especially, and all the regulatory sort of requirements, it's not as just simple as saying, all right, let's just, you know, put a bit of money on Facebook in the UK and see what works, right? So I think what we always sort of recommend is, you know, start shipping here out of Australia first and foremost, you know, to better understand the appetite for your product in that specific market, see what the response is, analyze the data just to say, all right, this is probably where we start getting the better response and possibly where we can start putting a bit more sort of efforts, you know, moving forwards in terms of acquisition and all of that. And then once you reach the stage of like, you're comfortable that there's an appetite for your product in that specific market, and, you know, that you've got from a compliance and, you know, and whatever sort of administrative sort of standpoint, you know, all the sort of, you know, all the ducks in a row and lined up, this is where, you know, we, you know, engage just sort of step 2 in the process, which is, all right, let's start distributing your inventory across some of our facilities that are, again, in those specific markets, but also specific, you know, regions, like thinking the US, you know, like it's such a large market that you want to be a bit more sort of targeted here. So it's a journey, it's a process, and to your points, we really want to make sure and working hand in hand with those merchants just to make sure that we don't skip any, because start shipping out of the UK without your VAT in place or some of the compliance, you know, is just setting yourself for failure over there. You know, so yeah, there's a lot involved.
There is we got checklists internally to do that. But even to G's point, and I've mentioned Memo Bottle before as well.
Yes, let's talk customer stories. Let's talk about Memo Bottle.
So let me jump into that, right? Especially on this point, use Kickstarter. Kickstarter is one of the most amazing, unheard of, all those crowdfunding tools in the e-commerce. I'm starting my side hustle. I'm going to launch it on Kickstarter first. And the reason being is you can go and launch a product without having all the inventory and then seeing how successful and testing it through that. And then at the same time, seeing where all your customers are coming from, launching a campaign in the US or into the regions that you want to ship and having that launched onto that without having the commitment. And then you've got time, if you've planned it out correctly, to then sit there and engage, hey, ShipBob, I now know how much I need to order plus then some, and I'm going to place this inventory with you guys. I need your help to go out and do that. But you've tested that kind of market, and because every market responds to different products differently all around the world. Aussies might love, you know, a certain, you know, type of food or a certain type of coffee compared to, you know, what the Americans might like or the Brits might like in that regards as well. So yeah,
I've seen I don't know, and you guys can validate this because you'll have more data on it, but I feel as though the US at the moment are just loving Australian brands.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's a real explosion. Have you seen that happen, and how have you kind of helped?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's all those sort of you know, there's probably more of a, you know, history sort of, you know, that links sort of Australia to the UK. I think from a cultural standpoint, to your point, there's definitely an alignment between US and Australia, and I think largely due to its lifestyle, I would say. But we've seen great deal of success, in expanding some of our local merchants, into the US and to the UK. And in fact, 1 in every sort of 2 customer interactions that we have right now, those brands are thinking first and foremost of like US launch before thinking even of Australia, right? Because
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
1 in 2.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at the forefront of every customer interactions that we have, and possibly because brands very early in their maturity sort of curve and journey here will have to sort of set up fulfillment, whether it's in house or outsourced locally. So they're like, all right, might not be ideal, but it works for now. Let's think about the US first, because there's a real appetite. There's a real alignment. We're saying real interest from the US markets. And ShipBob is best positioned to help there. So a lot of the conversations that we have is really around UK and US expansion.
Yeah, nice.
That's
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we jump into the customer products, just would love to know, I know you guys say that it's not sexy logistics, but I think it's very, very cool. I really do.
I find it fascinating.
Me too. It is. So for you guys personally, from a personal lens, what excites you about the work that you're doing? What motivates you to get up every day and go to work? Like, what is it about this space that you love?
Yeah. I will say, and that probably is a good segue for me to some of the customer products, right? Because what excites me is to work with brands, and we've got products here, the Life Cycle as an example, and those brands come to us and they're like, look, we're growing and rapidly, and the infrastructure that we have right now, the capabilities do not allow us to grow at the pace that we want, right? So in order for us to write the success that we want, we need, a company like, ShipBob or any other sort of 3PL, but just genuinely to really, help fuel that growth ambitions. And for me, that's really what excites me, because ultimately, looking at brands, seeing them grow from A to B is really the exciting part. You know what I mean? And I think, Anna, that sort of Member with Bottle story resonated with you because you were one of the trailbleazers, a few
I have a story.
Some might say.
I have a story.
Yeah, a story.
Are we gonna? We'll wait for the product review.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Josh-
will tell you. I will tell you about my
Your
memo
story.
Dying
story.
to tell us.
Dying.
For me, it's like a little bit different. And I think last Friday, you co-founded the Digital Inclusion Project with Kelly Sessa, and both of us are ambassadors on that.
Yep.
And hopefully, that's going to expand. But to me, I come from quite a diverse, different background. I've had my own struggles. A lot. G knows a lot. And e-commerce is one of those industries where people who come from any walks of life or any background can literally have an opportunity to succeed in life and live the most normal life that they possibly can. And you hear people who have disabilities, whether they're physical or appearance or not, who are starting up brands and being able to create these amazing inclusive types of products. And so coming into that fulfillment space, it is one of the challenges that a lot of these brands don't get to, don't understand fully, because they might have created a really great product and allow them to do that. And so for me to be able to come in and be the advocate on programs like that, share my own experiences. I grew up in Canberra from a lower socioeconomic family, and I really pushed the point that when I did drop out of school, that I worked for Defence, I worked for Telstra, I worked for all these, but I was never going to make bank, or I'm not going to be able to make a huge difference in those organizations. Where with e-commerce, we're such a tight-knit community, and we get to sit there and see these cool brands that make an impact to people's lives, or just fulfill their lives, or just give them satisfaction of wearing a great clothes or whichever. And it's everyday people from all walks of life that get to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
Because it resonates.
Brings it back down to earth.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. It's great to have a purpose of what we're doing. So thank you both for sharing. Let's jump. Hannah's dying to tell us the story.
So I've got 2 stories. But we'll start with Memo Bottle, right? And I want to hear more around how you work with them and how you've worked with help them grow.
Yeah.
But back in the day,
Sounds so old.
Way back when, back in the olden days, I went to university.
Great story. Cool.
Story.
Thanks,
Done.
babe.
No, I was at uni and I discovered Memo Bottle, and I think this was probably right after their Kickstarter campaign. They were clearly I didn't buy it online. I think I found it in a random news agency, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was like, wow, because at that stage, the only form of drink bottle I had was, an old Mount Franklin crumpled up thing. And so I spent my hard-earned dollars, which at that time was not much, to buy a big one of these bottles because I'm like, I'm going to use it. And I did. And every time I pulled it out of my bag, I'd have my fellow students look at me and be like, oh, that is the most interesting, coolest, smartest thing I've ever seen, especially because, when you're doing law, you've got all of these books, you've got a heavy backpack, you need to pack everything into your bag. So like Tetris-like, this was the most convenient thing I think I'd ever found. And I used it until it didn't look like this, let me tell you. It was scratched. It was not in a good shape. But, man, I held on to that for so long.
Gold.
I am obsessed with this drink bottle, people.
Yeah.
Okay, Hannah's
Obsessed.
taking this home with her, clearly.
You can have it. So Jono and Jesse, who are the co-founders of Memo Bottle, and I always get confused if I pronounce it wrong. And I always, do I say Memo? Yeah, I say Memo sometimes. And then they're like, we're not a fish tank. So they're launching new products next year, FYI, so keep an eye out for that. And I told them I want them to make me a fish tank so I can put Nemo in it and call it Memo. But this is my favorite one, right? And this is another concept that they do is they actually allow, people to get branded or businesses for promotional kitting and all that kind of stuff as well, which is a great gift. And we got them so that we could gift them at online retail and to other people. And the thing that I loved about this, and even at people at online retailer, is there was the bubblers around, but people often didn't have water bottles. And so even they'll come up and for me, it fits right in my back pocket.
So good.
So it's like I could walk around and I'll pull it out and I'm like, these are... So it is a really great product. And the amazing thing about these guys, it's around sustainability. It's around removing the single-use bottles around that and being refillable. And they also sit there and they donate to water.org, I think it is. It might be on the back here, if I'm saying it correctly. But, they're a Melbourne company. They've really saved a lot of water bottles from going into landfill. And their story, you'll have to get them on a podcast. I'm sure they'll love that.
Sure.
I did a one just the other day with Jesse for DTCX. But overall, the journey that they've gone on, and they're your typical kind of Aussie brand where people have tried ripping them off. People have seen the product and the designs that they've gone, and then they've tried to replicate that. And which it's disappointing to hear that, but to see them and their determination to cut through with that. So they actually started, as I mentioned before, on Kickstarter, and then they didn't even use us locally at the time because they had their own fulfillment. They we weren't even here at that time in Australia. And so then they used us overseas because they didn't want to, they wanted to make sure that they were sustainable, that they could get shipments quicker and all that as well. And so we've been able to see them grow and scale over the years. They're now going to be using us here in Australia at the same time. And they're just a brand that, you can just get around, and they're both legends. So I'm going to have to tell them that I gave them a big hype up.
Yeah, we'll send them this clip for sure. I just went and followed them on Instagram. They have stainless steel bottles as well in different colors, which is amazing. And I love that they're B Corp certified. And as you said, it's water.org. So it tells you this bottle has provided someone 5 months access to clean water.
Yes.
Which is awesome. Like the customer doesn't even have to think about it, and they've done something good. They're
really great, and they're going to be getting they're going to be doing more stuff in that space as well. So it's exciting.
And a perfect use case for that global expansion, right? So they use us across the UK and are very successful in the UK and the US, so it's great to see some homegrown Aussie brands.
Definitely.
I think
All about that.
they also won an award recently, a design award for a design, and they just today both of them have been nominated for the Victorian Entrepreneur of the Year kind of award as well.
Good on them.
This is the thing. I love the fact they're a brand with a purpose, but beyond that, the design is genius.
Yeah.
Again, my way back when I was at university, this was the most convenient thing I had.
Right
and
next to
something
your
that,
laptop.
exactly. It works for a busy person who's either studying or working that has to commute. Super convenient.
Love
Love
it.
and thank you for bringing them
Yeah.
on
And
the
then
show.
The other one,
Yeah.
which I keep telling Memo Bottle and Life Cycle they should do a collaboration because at Online Retailer we had them on there and people get a water bottle, squirt it in there and go about on their day.
So
You can add it to your water.
let's talk second story. I have recently found mushrooms.
What kind of
Not like
mushrooms,
that.
Hannah?
Not like that.
What kind of
Not like
mushrooms?
that.
Make it very clear. Make it very clear.
Looking around.
No, I'm a busy person, right? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who struggles from fatigue and from mental exhaustion and burnout. And that has honestly been very much my life for the last year, probably 2 years, let's be real. And I was kind of like just desperate to find something that would help me. And it was anything, right? And I've tried so many different things in terms of functional, medicinal, holistic approaches to the way that I could help my fatigue and my exhaustion. And so I found, and admittedly that just mushroom powder, right? Mixed mushroom powder. And I've been taking that for the last 6 months. And when I tell you, I feel transformed in the way that I'm getting up earlier. I have mental clarity for pretty much the whole day. I have energy. I'm sleeping better. Like I'm not getting sick. I cannot talk highly enough around, and I'm not a medical practitioner, so no one come at me. But mushrooms, like a mixed mushrooms and just understanding different types of mushrooms and the health benefits and what they do, it has been a journey for me. Like I am fully converted. So I love Life Cycle. I love what they're doing. I love the fact that they've made it easy to consume because I think that's the first step, right, of just understanding whether this will work for you. And ultimately, all legal. So let's be real that they're health benefit mushrooms, functional mushrooms, not.
Have you guys tried it?
Put
Mushrooms?
more than that in there.
But I don't have that much water.
I just squirt it straight in my mouth.
Really?
really?
I don't like the taste too much. Some
I'm
people
gonna
love
try
it.
my
I'm
water.
neutral.
I'm going to do both.
I did do that to people at Online Retailer.
I mean, it's not a very strong taste, is it?
It's just
It's not so
Yeah.
strong.
okay.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
gonna do the
So
in the water
This
as
one's
like a.
focus, and this one's more for your gut health,
Can you,
which
I
is
was
what I
about-
love.
I was about to say they've
I
got,
take both.
they've got
Probably
a
showing
wide
in the
range.
camera.
Can you OD on it? Because I've put a lot.
Well, I did ask it.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
And Nessa was, I usually put 2 squirts, sometimes 3
I
or 4.
put 2 of each.
Nessa's like, drink a bottle, but don't.
Okay, let's actually have a look at recommended daily dose because
I think
It's too
2.
late. I'm drinking.
But
Shake
I
well
think
before
it's
you're using
it's
or
another.
shake
I mean, the power of mushrooms and the experience that you've shared with us, I think seems to be very consistent across the board. I think we've all tried mushrooms. And for me it was exactly
well, not all.
Hold up.
what kind of mushrooms?
Speak for yourself.
But I think what I love about Life Cycle is like it's another great example, same as Memo Bottle, of like an Aussie born and bred sort of brands, and that's known like such a rapid growth and fame over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, and it's been an absolute pleasure for us working with the team there. Yeah, I mean it's amazing to see how fast they've grown, and I'm not only talking in Australia because I think initially, I think they really sort of grew really fast offer sort of an endorsement. They had
A
you know,
podcast.
other
Rogan.
podcasts,
A
here you go,
podcast.
you
That-
know,
it
the Joe Rogan
works.
podcast, right? And
Which
everything
was
took off from there.
not a paid podcast,
Yeah.
not a paid endorsement either.
Yeah,
Correct.
so good.
And it just took off from there. And again, that's a brand that we have, you know, recently sort of launched across, you know, the UK market, and they're looking at a US expansion, you know, very soon. So, you know, that's another great success story of Aussie brands, you know, I mean, exporting.
Yeah,
Love
they only started with us earlier this year around online retailer, and since then, you know, they already have some operations in the US because some of the mushrooms come from the US, but yeah, you know, their Australian operations here is absolutely, they're smashing it. And when we talk about a true partnership, I think them and their involvement with us at the same time is a true partnership. And Nesto, who's the main fulfillment person over there, has come to our warehouse many times. And, you know, you ladies are invited to our warehouse. I do.
Yes, I
we
was
do
about to say.
Yeah, we do warehouse tours all the time. Any potential customers, we take them out there and we show them how it works, because seeing that operations is a lot better.
Where is
But,
it? Where's the warehouse?
Kemps Creek or in Sydney, and Altona in Melbourne. So it's a bit of a journey, but hey, there's a good barbecue joint that G's got me hooked onto. And
sold. Sold.
so now we'll go. But yeah, and so that's the perfect thing about them is, you know, they work very closely with our team. It's a, you know, a true partnership, and, you know, it's a great product. It's
Fantastic.
they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you can put it in any drink. 'Cause
Oh,
some
yeah.
people don't like coffee, some people
Correct.
don't like tea.
Correct.
So that's fantastic, the convenience of it.
See
So
how you
good.
go. Let us know.
Yeah,
Not to
check
ex-
on me in
I was
about
about
an
to say
hour.
not to exceed the daily dose. or-
Yeah.
Hallucinations.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
No, none of that. No. Amazing. Thank you guys so much. It's been a very insightful conversation, and we've loved talking ship with you.
Yeah, I love talking ship.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
No, pleasure. Please.
We do want to offer your listeners, any
Yes.
merchants that are, you know, keen on learning about ShipBob, feel free to reach out to us. Reach out to me if you can on LinkedIn, or even you know, reach out to you guys here, or even just our website. We are offering listeners a $2,000 USD in free shipping credits
Wow.
if they start engaging with us before the end of the year and start shipping with us by 31st of May next year. And so if, you know, that is a key, it means once they start shipping, they can start to get those credits, and especially for your small businesses, that could go a long way.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that we put that on socials as well, because I think that's a great offer, guys. And I can
Yes.
see how much value your solution and the way that you work with brands brings to them. And so I think for us, we're really passionate about making sure that we communicate the best of breed solutions with the best of breed retailers that we often interview. So that's a really generous offer. And thank you so much.
I'll say 31st of December 2023, so no one
Just in
listens to
case.
this next year. Yeah,
no, very good point.
It is an exclusive offer. It's
Yeah.
not what we usually kind of do, but, you know, it's the end of the year, and G and I went and got approval for something like
Amazing.
this.
We love that.
Thank
So,
you, ShipBob.
yeah.
Awesome.
No.
Our listeners will appreciate it. Thank you very much, and
Thank
we
you.
will talk to you soon, no doubt.
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Over
Thanks
and
for having
out.
us.
Mushroom power.
I feel it's kicking in now.
Yeah.